So I'm here this week with Cody Hurley. He is the founder of OhioHighSchoolDivision1Football.com. And Cody, if you could, just kind of talk about why you decided to do this, why did you start it, and go through your process there.
Okay. So it's kind of dawned on me like a month ago that I'm, working with you, Grant, for 8 high school football games. I could talk high school football forever. You know that. Our long car rides.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know this about me. My family traditionally is all about high school football. No one really knows that, but my dad played for Wayne High School in Huber Heights. He had scholarships to go to Ohio State, Michigan. My cousin was on the number 3 ranked team in the nation in 2012 in Pennsylvania. Matt Nichols was his name. Played for North Allegheny High School. They won 2 out of 3 championships, state championships in Pennsylvania. My uncle was a 4-year member at Centerville High School for varsity. They actually beat number 1 in the nation, Archbishop Moeller, when he was there in high school as well. And and then my grandpa started it all, and he built Centerville Stadium, which is to this day one of the biggest high school football stadiums in the state of Ohio. So high school football has always been part of just who I am.
Yeah.
And I have covered sports so much, just, at Wright State University. I covered sports on ESPNU, ESPN3, covering sports here at ONU. And I kind of, I'm 23 years old, and I was like, you know what? Let me look into, making my own high school football website. And I didn't even know how to get it started, and I just kind of looked around, and I kind of found something on Wix.com, and I was like, I really want to do this. This is something really cool that I can do just to kind of express my passion for the sport to the world. And I just did it. It was awesome. It's been a lot of work, hard work, though, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're not a guy who played high school football, but you went to Centerville, obviously a state powerhouse. And so is it something about maybe Centerville football or the Centerville community that got you into loving high school football so much?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a lot of people, when they think of high school football powers, you think of Cleveland St. Ignatius, Moeller, St. Xavier.
Right.
But the biggest names, if you think of people from Ohio, A.J. Hawk, Mike Nugent, 2 Centerville High School alums.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch College Game Day every Saturday, you're looking at Kirk Herbstreit, Centerville High School alum. Centerville is a tradition-rich program that has gone on for a long time. It's been very successful. And then when I was there, actually, Michael Bennett, who played for the 2014 national championship team for Ohio State,
right,
who now plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I went on mission trips with the guy. So being on, just growing up in Centerville, being around that kind of caliber of level of talent and just tradition, that's what got me started, basically.
So what do you want to do with this website? I mean, it's just for Division I high school football in Ohio, so it's kind of a niche website. What's your mission here?
I was looking at maxprepstoday.com, which is a high school sports source, for the nation rankings, scores, whatever you could really want.
Yeah. And
there were predictions on there, and it actually there's a lot of high school sports analysts in Ohio. You have J.J. Huddle, for football specifically, you have Joe Idle, and then you have Drew Pastor as well, who have fantastic sources for their sites. And they had a big article on Max Preps talking about, here's our high school football prediction contest between all the people I just named. And I was like, man, that would be cool one day if I could have my site up there too. And, Max Preps is asking me for my picks for the playoffs. I just want people to enjoy the information that I am giving out, and I just feel like I have a lot to give for high school football in general. I have such a love for the sport. I feel like I kind of modeled off of ESPN. I kind of wanted to be like a Ohio high school Division I football ESPN site. Anything you could really want for Division I football, and specifically just kind of like how ESPN is when you go on and look for your ESPN teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the go-to site.
Yeah.
Right. When you were thinking about what you wanted this site to be about, obviously you're huge into high school football, but was there an incentive for you to narrow it down to Division I, and why did you narrow it down to Division I?
I narrowed it down to Division I because I felt that's what I knew best.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton of, I did not even know Ada High School existed until last year when I started going to school here at Ohio Northern, but and Ada is Division VI.
Right.
I don't I don't know much about those schools, so honestly, it wouldn't really be fair for me to cover those schools. I really don't know anything about them. I can't give people accurate information.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Division I, that is something I've covered. I covered in high school. At the highest level, broadcasting games between Centerville and Braxton Miller, against Wayne High School,
Right.
or against Moeller, St. X, those big powers in Cincinnati. Division I is something I'm very familiar with, especially being an athlete who competed at the Division I level in high school in Ohio as well.
Mm-hmm. So talk about the different facets of your website. Obviously, you mentioned the projections, but you also have stories you write each week. What do you do on the website?
So I have a couple personalized things. I have sources for people to kind of, like I said, the go-to website, as you said, for high school Division I football. That's what I would like it to be in Ohio. And I have scores. You can check the weekly scores.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to you get the newspaper and you get the scores, and it's 10 font. You have to read it and squint, get the magnifying glass out to find your school. I have it all. I have the scores. I have the rankings by the AP, the computer rankings. I have the national rankings from USA Today on there. This took a while to do, but I have a list of what the top 20 biggest high school football stadiums for Division I specifically are in Ohio. And that took a lot of effort and a lot of digging, and I found a lot of answers. That was really cool. I made a part of my page specifically for recruits. So who are the top Division I players this year, where they're going to college? You can go to ESPN, you see ESPN's top 300. I use that, and I use other sources as well to find all these players, where they're going. I'm citing all this information for people to reference. I'm referencing, but I'm also, the reason why I'm doing it and I'm giving all this information is because I want it to be in all one place for someone, so they don't have to go to a million different sites to find this information. They can just come to one site. And I think my favorite aspect of it is, I've always done this. I've always, making my predictions has been something I've always loved to do, but also my own personal rankings, having my own thought and who I think belongs where. I have my own, so it's called Cody's Power 25 rankings. I list my top 25 teams, and then I give 5 teams who I said honorable mention, who I think are my next top 5 in.
Yeah.
And I update that every week, even with the playoffs. So that's something. Those are all features I thoroughly enjoy doing on my site.
Uh-huh. So as a one-stop shop here for Division I high school football, how hard is it, let's say on game night this Friday night, how hard is it to, get all the scores up as quick as you can? How many different websites are you going to? And especially because, if you're at the Centerville game, you aren't in person at the game across the state and in Cleveland, let's say at St. Ignatius. So, just kind of walk me through what a game night might be like for you, I guess, in that respect.
Yeah. My go-to for everything has always been Twitter.
Okay.
I feel like Twitter, specifically with sports, you type in, for example, Ohio State, Penn State from a couple weekends ago, I could learn every single thing that was going on, whatever happened 10 seconds ago, I can see what just happened. I followed every single Division I school, specifically their football programs, if I could, on Twitter, and I have notifications for them all.
Uh-huh.
And as I'm watching the Centerville game and I'm cheering on my Elks, I'm also periodically checking the scores and I'm retweeting. And I have my Twitter feed. I have my own Twitter feed. You can find it. There's a link on my site at ohiohighschoolfootball.com or division1football.com, excuse me. But I have my Twitter feed on my site that shows what I just retweeted. Mm-hmm. And plus, if you follow me, and you can see what I'm retweeting, so you can get all the scores. I try to retweet. Some schools only retweet, at halftime and when the game's over. Right. Others tweet every single play. So I try to keep it. I tweet at halftime what the score is and what the final score is, just to make sure I'm not flooding someone's timeline with a bajillion notifications.
Mm-hmm. And then as the week goes on, how demanding is it to keep producing content for the website?
Oh, it's so demanding. Yeah. I'm a college student and a college athlete at the same time, so I'm busy. I try to nail it down. I try to post 9 articles a week. Uh-huh. 8 articles about. I have one headline article about the biggest story this past week, which has happened, is Coleraine beat Moeller 45-0 in the first round of the playoffs, which was just amazing
Yeah.
for anyone to do that. Or the week before, you had a matchup between St. Ignatius and St. Edward, who were number one and number two. So just like, ESPN would have their big headline story for their headline game, that's what I have. I have a headline story for the week. And then after that, I have 7 other schools who are up in the rankings, who are doing really well. And then I leave one article for a team maybe that's not ranked, but they're doing really well, and I feel they deserve some credibility, and I deserve they get their name out there as well. It's so much work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, and it puts a lot of time into. It's a lot of my free time, but I love it. The articles is what's taking forever. Those take forever, but once I get them done and once I get them out there and people are retweeting them, and I have these high schools retweeting them and their ADs and the high school football coaches retweeting them, and they're saying, "Oh, these are great, thank you." And I got on, and one of them has over 377 people that have read it. I've only had this website out for 2 weeks, so it's very time consuming, but it's worth it.
You mentioned your projections, and they're statewide. So how challenging is it, because this is a one-man band here, for you to make decisions on how you rank teams based on, you might not have seen St. Ignatius play this year up in Cleveland. So is that a challenge for you, not seeing every team?
Of course. But I will say, I think, as a sport management major, as someone who loves sports, and I've always, followed Ohio State, that's been always my college team. A lot of my family's always gone there. I'm always looking to see, what's Ohio State ranked in this, that, what are the predictions for the NCAA tournament or for the college football playoff.
Right.
And there's a lot of things. You see strength of schedule. You see, are they playing... who are they playing? You know what I'm saying? Because that's the big thing. Is I think in high school football a lot, a prime example for you is this past week you had a team that was 9-1 in the Region 1 playoff bracket. It was Mentor, who was the 3 seed, and they were 9-1. You had Stowe Monroe Falls, who was the 6 seed. Now Mentor had played very tough competition all year, and then Stowe Monroe Falls, even though they were 9-1 and they were ranked in the state, they only played 2 or 3 Division I schools all year. The rest of them were D3 schools or D2 schools. And I'm not saying anything against those smaller programs, but the competition is not as difficult. So when I'm looking at those, I reference Drew Pasture's strength of schedule. I see, okay, how tough is their schedule really?
Right.
I reference different sites. I reference Joe Idle for, to get a quick glance on the what their schedule is. But ultimately, I make those decisions, I think, a lot on strength of schedule. And also, if I know that you just beat Moeller 45-0, and the tradition of that program and how good that program is, obviously that's pretty impressive. But it is, I can see how it's difficult. And I also sometimes, what I like to do is, the last couple of weeks I've referenced what my rankings were, and I referenced them to see what did Drew Pasture have, what did JJ Huddle have, what does USA Today or Max Preps have for the state rankings as well, just so I can compare. And mine are not very different. They're not very different, but I think I definitely have my own personal opinions in there.
So another challenge that you probably face in starting a website is readership. And you mentioned the social media avenue, all the retweets and things like that. How do you get people to read what you produce?
That's a good question. And I think the best way to do it is when you're getting started, and that's what social media is for, to get get the word out there. If I had not followed all those schools on Twitter, if I had not, when I post an article, I post the article, and I usually tag whatever football team or whatever school I'm talking about in that article when I post it on Twitter. If I did not do that, they would have never seen that.
Yeah.
And I would never have gotten, I had one mom, she tweeted me back and said, "Oh, this article was so amazing. It brought me to tears about my son." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, wow." So it's crazy, but you have to just engage people on social media, because it is the biggest tool, I feel like, to get yourself out there. But it's difficult to do.
Yeah. So is this something that you want to keep doing long term? Obviously, you started it this fall, and you mentioned off mic that you'll have some time this summer to work on it. So what's your long term plan for this website?
There's glitches in the website still. There's some things I'd like to add.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing, I think the biggest challenge so far, and I think it's because of what site I've been using, is getting it mobily to look nice.
Okay.
And I did a lot of things actually this past week working on the mobile site. But there's a lot of things I want to change and maybe set things up to prepare myself for what, make a schedule like. Okay, on Sunday I'm going to release these power rankings. On Monday I'm going to do this. Tuesday I'm going to do this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Being a sport management major, you can do anything with your career, honestly, if in the sports field. You can be an athletic director. You can be all sorts of different things. One thing in being doing broadcasting and doing it for like on ESPNU and ESPN3 and that kind of thing for Wright State, ESPN is something that I've always wanted to do, and I think this is definitely something I could do long term. I think I could run this site, and that's the goal. Is I want to get, and I have it on there. I have a section about me, and it tells you all about myself, my experience with covering high school and college athletics. And I honestly, working for ESPN would be amazing, and that would be just a top goal for me. Mm-hmm. But that's definitely something I'd like to do long term.
Yeah. Last question. So you started this website. You first at least put out there, I believe the week leading into the first round of the playoffs this season. Was that intentional? And, what kind of process has this been like, or what's the grind been like starting this in the playoffs?
It's made it difficult, and it wasn't really intentional. I think, I was showing it to us when I first was working on it. I was like, I have this idea. I don't know if it's gonna, what it's gonna be like. It was just an idea. I showed it to my brother, showed it to some of my friends, my family. I'm like, what were you thinking? And they're like, oh, you should publish it. And I for the longest, I'm like, no, it's not ready. It's not ready. I want it to be, I don't know if I'm OCD in that way. I just want it to be perfect. Of course, it's not perfect, but it wasn't intentional for me to release it from the playoffs, but I wanted to get it out there before the season was over. And I thought covering the last week of the season, the regular season, and then heading to the playoffs, I thought it would be a good way just to kind of get my name out there for these people to know. And then in the fall of 2018, I can start my coverage again, late summer, early fall, and then they're going to know, oh, hey, let's check out his website. And it's going to be something I hope people check out throughout the rest of the season for the years to come.